The SmackDown vs. Raw series certainly has its ups and downs. 2008 was probably one of the most significant releases in the series, appearing on every major platform at that time, and for some reason selling absolute gangbusters. Well, if 2008 was so popular and the best reviewed game in the series, surely 2009 can hold a candle to it. When I was younger, I didn't really care much for 2009. It was just 2008 with better tag matches. But is that a fair assessment? Alone you're great, but together you're unstoppable. And that's exactly why today we're going to be looking back at SVR 2009 and if I was unfair to judge it so harshly back when it was first released. SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 was released in late 2007. It drastically slowed down the gameplay in the aim of becoming slightly more simulation based and trying to replicate what a real wrestling match was like. They introduced new fighting styles that would encourage specific playstyles for certain characters, which would give them special abilities, but ultimately made characters feel quite limited in what they could actually do. A big part of the success for SVR 08 was the fact that it was released on every major console at that time. SVR 07 was the first game to make the jump to the next generation, with a big release on the newly launched Xbox 360, unfortunately skipping the PS3 due to development issues with the complicated hardware. 2008 would remedy this by releasing on both PS3 and 360 alongside the old faithful PS2. But it doesn't end there. There were some really good ports to consoles like the PSP, the Wii, and even the DS. This would essentially mean that if you owned any game console at that time, you could enjoy a version of SVR 2008, and other than the obvious graphic differences, there isn't really much difference in many of those versions. With the rampant success of 2008, THQ would take the opportunity then to capitalize on the success and try releasing two games in 1 year. This may have been partially inspired by the early odds when THQ would publish separate WWE games for different platforms, but here they are in late 2008 trying to do a similar thing. So SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 would release in late 2008, and much like its predecessor, it would release on every platform at that time. The focus this time is specifically on tag team wrestling. Ironically enough, this game actually feels like one half of a tag team, as THQ would then later go on to release Legends of Wrestlemania later that year. We'll talk a little bit about Legends of Wrestlemania in this review, but it will get a dedicated episode in this review series. In some good news, the fighting styles that were added in 2008 that kind of restricted how characters play has been removed already, instead replaced with character attributes, giving superstars multiple talents that they can draw from within a match. Now you can have a superstar that is proficient in both springboards, top rope dives, and even using weapons all at the same time. And this goes a really long way to improving the feel of each character so they don't all feel the same based on the style that they use. This is also in conjunction with the iterative gameplay improvements year on year. 2008 was criticized for feeling very slow. Every action and animation in that game does feel sluggish, and this was in the aim to create a match pace that would somewhat match what you would regularly see on TV. The problem is that this makes a video game that you need to play for fun rather boring. Thankfully, 2009 does speed up the gameplay quite a bit. It certainly still feels quite slow, but definitely less sluggish. So let's break down some of the controls this year. In a nutshell, the right thumbstick in any direction will be your quick grapple. Holding the R1 or equivalent button will be the modifier for strong grapples. Reversals are still on the triggers, left is for reversing strikes, and right is for reversing grapples, and both for blocking a finisher. And your face buttons are for simple actions, so square are for strikes, cross or X is for actions like getting in and out of the ring, circle is the Irish whip, button, and triangle is for finishers or signatures. Yes, this game actually introduces a new finisher state for your character called a signature. Instead of storing a finisher that can be used at a later time, now you can use a character's signature move. So for example, John Cena has his typical attitude adjustment as his main finisher, but now you can do the 5-knuckle shuffle as his signature ability. As much as I do love the ability to do a signature, I don't particularly like the implementation here, considering that if you do use a finisher while the bar is filled, you will do considerable damage to your opponent, and storing the finisher will not only do less damage, but now does a whole different move. Typically in real WWE, a wrestler's signature ability rarely actually ends a match, so the fact that a signature is like the next step of a finisher feels really odd for me. I find it really hard to kind of explain why I don't like the system, but if we compare it to modern WWE games, it makes a lot more sense to me that you can use your signature before you hit your finisher. So this is something that was refined in later releases, but in 2009, it does feel just a little odd to me. The biggest gameplay improvements can actually be seen when you load a 2v2 tag team match. Yuke's have made significant improvements to the tag team matches this year, where we now have hugely improved AI that actually do try and stop the opponent from breaking up pins. We also now have a selection of tag team finishers. In tag team matches, both people in a team share a momentum bar, so when you have a finisher, you can whip your opponent into the corner and trigger a tag team finisher. There are some amazing finishers to do here, and they do huge damage, and can easily lead to the end of a match. If you're getting a bit beat down, your tag team partner can get the crowd on your side and build up to a new hot tag. Doing a hot tag will trigger a quick time event where you need to press the buttons that appear on screen, and you'll be put into a position to hit the perfect finisher, and the opposing tag team partner will be knocked off the apron. So this is the single best way to win a tag team match. Now we'll talk specifically about presentation later, but I will give an honourable mention to the odd gameplay mechanic that they have added when you leave the ring. When you leave the ring in 2009 and have the camera cuts enabled, the camera will swoop down to the corner barricade outside of the ring. On paper and in real life, this is actually a good angle to get closer to the action, so you do technically have better visibility of what's going on. But in practice, in a video game, it actually makes controlling the characters outside of the ring really confusing. You're never really sure what direction to be moving your character in, and it's even more confusing on how to Irish whip your opponent back into the ring. Last year, I played through all of John Cena's Road to Wrestlemania on this channel, and I really wanted to put someone through an announce table, and it took me ages to not only figure out how to prep the table to be broken. By the way, pressing A will take the top of the table off, just to let you know. But also how to get the opponent actually onto the table. It was a faff then, and it's still a faff now. I'm glad that this didn't stick around for too long in the video games. Talking of faffs, can we talk about all the stuff that they removed from this game? One of the best game modes from the previous years that felt like it was really finally getting somewhere was GM mode. In 2008, it was elaborated on to be a full weekly calendar with 3 full shows, rosters, and pay-per-views to manage. It even had 3-player multiplayer for an amazingly great long-term party game. But was it improved upon in 2009? Was it? Fuck. Not only was it removed, there's like zero trace of the mode ever being there. They completely removed everything and anything that resembled WWE 24/7 mode from the previous year. And yes, I can admit that it wasn't my favorite version of the mode. I would have taken a copy and paste of the mode into this year if it meant that it was still there. Typically in game franchises like this, sometimes you do get game modes that disappear for a year or two, and usually there's a statement from the publisher explaining that they've taken it out to rebuild it from the ground up, or some corporate jargon like that. In this case, there was really nothing. It just didn't make it into that game, and that's that. Ultimately, it feels like they removed one of my favorite game modes and didn't even really replace it with anything substantial. I mentioned that 24/7 mode has also been removed. This has actually been replaced with another game mode called Career Mode. Do you see Career Mode listed anywhere on this main menu? No. I can only imagine it's because they were absolutely ashamed of the game mode, and they absolutely should be. You take a custom character through the mode to earn ability points to increase your character stats. By winning a certain amount of matches will increase your standings, and then you can compete for championships, and then you will eventually win that title and continue to defend it. Does this sound boring? Well, there's literally no story here. It is. It's just a series of matches. This may as well just be an arcade mode. You can't even hold all the titles at once. To progress onto another title, you need to vacate the one that you're currently holding. It's just a silly game mode, and thankfully the whole thing can be bypassed with a cheat code, but honestly, just don't waste your time on this one. Well, I wonder what else has been removed, so let's look a little bit closer. Okay, so there's no buried alive match. I can somewhat understand this. It's not a match that is commonly seen on TV, and maybe some of the sponsors didn't like the idea of burying a superstar alive, right? Oh, so they added the freaking Inferno match this year. Okay, so maybe sponsors prefer the idea of burning someone alive instead of burying them? I don't know. I'm trying to make this make sense, but I don't think I can. 2007 introduced a small area by the top right crowd barricade where wrestlers could fight into the crowd. It featured a really cool scaffolding and a lot of weapons to play around with. How did they improve this then in 2009? Oh, it's gone. Okay, so I can only imagine that there apparently just wasn't room for improvement, so they thought just to cut all the stuff out that wasn't really working and leave the game feeling lesser than the previous year? Well, I would argue that in 2009, WWE was not in a good place. They were firmly in the PG era, and John Cena really began his reign of terror. Many of the main eventers that we loved from the Attitude Era were either gone or part-time now. WWE weren't in the business of making stars at that point in time, so it was fully coasting on the success of John Cena. As a result, the roster does feel a little lackluster, relying on people like Chuck Palumbo, Jesse, and Festus to fill out the roster. I'd even like to say that DLC improved this too, but even that was pretty lackluster, with possibly the worst character model they've ever made in Charlie Haas. And there's some alternate costumes for people like Kelly and Chris Jericho. But as you explore the roster list, you'll also notice that there are just no legends to be seen anywhere. That is because THQ made the decision to remove all legends from this game, and instead force customers to buy Legends of WrestleMania if they wanted to see any legend representation in that year. Again, we are going to fully explore Legends of WrestleMania in a future video. I've been ignoring the biggest and best addition to this year's game, the very first version of Road to WrestleMania. Now, if you don't know what Road to WrestleMania is, it's a collection of 6 short stories that follow individual storylines starting at the new year and culminating in that year's WrestleMania. Some of these storylines are really cool and totally fan service, but that's okay in my opinion. We have Triple H having to choose his allegiance between Evolution or D-Generation X. CM Punk has to fight his way to remind people what ECW actually stands for. John Cena becomes Captain America and fights against a foreign nation. And The Undertaker has a story that is filled with supernatural bullshit, which would make absolutely no sense in real life, but in a video game format, it is super fun. Arguably the best storyline from this year is the Rey Mysterio and Batista storyline, where it can be played either single player or multiplayer. And depending on the choices made during that story and which character wins the Royal Rumble can lead to a really fun WrestleMania where you are either working with your partner or against them. Creation Suite has also seen many improvements. I'm not nearly as creative as I used to be, but looking on old forums you can definitely find a lot of really talented people who were able to create some fantastic realistic looking characters or representations of real characters from other promotions. This is the first game to also feature Create a Finisher, and honestly, it's kind of amazing. You can really create lots of different moves here, and it's a really great addition to the game. The only downside I can see is that it's very easy to create a lame move that can instantly put your opponent in red health, which was very much abused in the online space at the time. Now let's talk visuals. I originally felt like this game looked worse than 2008, but in hindsight, it does look like 2009 is actually an improvement, but maybe not by much. I can't really explain why it looks better. Perhaps it's the same game with a whole new lighting model, but I guess in unexplainable ways it just looks a bit better. At least we can confidently say that all of the pay-per-views are represented very well in the game. I do always commend Yuke's for their amazing recreations of the WWE stage designs around this time. Mega shoutouts go out to the recreation of the WrestleMania 24 arena as well. That stage is hands down one of the best designs that WWE has ever done, and I think for the most part, Yuke's actually did an amazing job at recreating that stage. They do however get docked points for having it in an indoor arena that looks nothing like the Citrus Bowl. And they didn't even bother to recreate the overhead lighting structure that they actually had for the show as well. Ironically, the same cannot be said for the Tribute to the Troops arena. They recreated the Tribute 2008 arena with insane detail, with it even being an outdoor arena with no overhead lighting, and it is one of my favourite arenas in any game ever. Every single time that I load up 2009, I absolutely need to do at least one match in the Tribute arena just to satisfy my venue needs. I remember at the time also really enjoying the licensed soundtracks for SVR 09. Playing it on the channel, I can say that every track is still a banger, and it features hits from Egypt Central, Burn, Halo, POD, amongst many others. And although it's not a huge soundtrack, you will definitely hear these tracks on repeat, but you will find yourself humming or singing along with them in no time. One amazing feature at that time too was the fact that Create an Entrant did feature custom music. If you had music ripped onto your PS3 or Xbox 360 hard drive, then you would be able to use that music in your character's entrances. I understand that nowadays there's a whole mess of licenses and who owns what, but that was such a banger feature that it needs to return somehow. At this point, you'll understand that I've tried to be fair to this game. I didn't like it at the time, and I think I've made some of my opinions pretty clear so far. But if there's any ambiguity, let's clear this one up. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 feels like half a game, and I guess that's because it kind of is. Not only did they remove 2 key game modes from 2008, they also cut the game in half to accommodate Legends of WrestleMania. Legends is definitely a strange game in its own right, and if you look at the footage, you can tell it's running on the 2009 game engine, but there are so many changes that have been made. There's also some good game modes in Legends, but 2009 is very much lacking modes beyond Road to WrestleMania. And we're really talking about the base game here. SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 was the first game to feature DLC, and while the DLC for the most part is decent, there's console-specific DLC which is really bad. I did see a while ago that Yumboy has a mod or game save that would unlock a lot of this DLC on Xbox 360, which is really great. But console-specific DLC should never really exist anyway. The first DLC pack for that year was a roster update, which featured the aforementioned terrifying Charlie Haas. But it also featured Evan Bourne, and more amazingly, Super Crazy. The second DLC pack was released shortly after the release of Legends of WrestleMania and featured legends such as Doink, Vader, Earthquake, and the Bushwhackers. One really cool feature of Legends of WrestleMania is the ability to import the 2009 roster into the game, but you were unable to import DLC characters. So while the intention of adding a DLC pack dedicated to Legends in 2009 is a great sentiment, you can't actually use these legends in the game about Legends. THQ and Yuke's were in their stride when SVR 09 was released. They were coming off a huge success of SVR 2008, and they were taking a big risk on splitting the game into 2 separate releases with Legends of WrestleMania. I can't help but feel like SVR 2009 is a regressive game. They have made improvements to the gameplay speed, more move animations and roster updates, but they removed a major part of the game, 24/7 and GM mode. These were the modes that kept people playing the game all year long. Road to WrestleMania is no doubt an amazing addition to the game, but once you finish those stories, there's very little reason to keep playing the game. Had GM mode been left in an untouched state, we would have no doubt complained about it at the time, but it would have given this game a better leg to stand on. I can now confidently say that this game feels like a cash grab. and considering the reason to split the game into two that year was purely a revenue-based decision, I don't think I'm overly out of place for saying that this game is just a disappointing cash grab. With that being said though, I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know your memories of SVR 2009 in the comments down below, and subscribe for more wrestling game reviews and gameplay. Thank you very much for watching, have a great day, and bye for now.